Chairman, for coming here. Every few months I remind you that you have not yet used your authority to break up the too-big-to-fail institutions. And I will spend the next minute reminding you, they are too big to fail. If the entity, just one entity, goes down, it could take our whole economy down with them. They're too big to compete against because economic studies say that that investors and the markets assume that they will be bailed out. They've seen that Congress will pass new legislation to bail out if that is thought necessary to save the economy, and that therefore they're able to get a cost of funds that may be as much as 80 basis points less than they would otherwise. They are too big to jail, as former attorney generals have said they wouldn't criminally prosecute because it might take down the whole economy. They're not, if the same thing was done by a medium-sized bank, no economic problem, go ahead and prosecute. And then with the Wells Fargo debacle, we have a difference between Republicans and Democrats. Democrats tend to blame the management of Wells Fargo and say that that proves they were too big to manage. And Republicans tend to blame you, the regulators, which just proves that they were too big to regulate. So too big to fail, too big to compete against, too big to jail, too big to manage, too big to regulate. When a protozoa gets too big, it is able to split into two healthy cells. And I would think that the geniuses on Wall Street would have the same, at least the same level of intelligence as the average one-celled aquatic animal. Well, every time you come here, you're attacked by those who criticize the low interest rates that we've had in our economy. Now, with low interest rates, you get more economic growth, but you might also get more inflation. Over the last 5 years, has rampant inflation been a disastrous difficulty for the American economy?
Inflation has been running under our 2% objective for the last 5 years and continues to do so.
And I won't even ask you this question because it's so obvious. Has economic growth been too robust? It
has not been particularly robust, but it's been sufficiently robust to create a lot of jobs and drive down the unemployment.
But every day, every time you come here, you're told that the interest rates are too low, but you're also criticized because the economic growth has not been robust enough. Now, behind you, at the request of the majority, is the national debt clock. The majority always comes and tells you that you should shrink your balance sheet, that you should sell off your assets. Of course, you in effect are lending money for longer terms and borrowing money for shorter terms, or just printing it one way or the other. And you create a tremendous profit for the federal government by having a big balance sheet. So people want you to have a small balance sheet when your big balance sheet is creating a lot of profits for the federal government. Have any of the advocates for a smaller balance sheet proposed to you the taxes they want to increase in order to replace the profits that you're earning on the balance sheet that they're telling you to shrink?
It is certainly true that our large balance sheet has resulted in very substantial transfers to the Treasury and to the federal budget. Let me say, our objective is not to make a profit and to maximize those transfers, but rather to do what is right in the pursuit of our objectives. But
I would say that the millions of Americans who want us to run the federal government more like a business would say that perhaps profit should be thought of as an important objective. And I'll take your answer as that you have not heard any proponent of a smaller balance sheet put forward a tax increase proposal designed to replace those revenues or to keep that clock behind you from turning more quickly. Finally, we want businesses to do things that require longer-term capital. You tend to focus on short-term interest rates. What has your big balance sheet done to decrease the gap between short and long-term interest rates, the yield curve?
We purchased those assets to drive down long-term interest rates relative to short, or to flatten the yield curve and lower
And if you-
longer-term borrowing rates.
And so the proposals are
believe it
to
did that.
make it more difficult to borrow money long-term.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Time, and the gentleman has